For as long as humans have lived, we have, on some conscious or unconscious level, feared death. And tradition dictates that some might respond to that fear by trying to escape it, by seeking immortality. From the Philosopher's Stone to the Fountain of Youth, seeking immortality has been the quest of many a hero. But what happens once they achieve that quest? How does a mortal bear the burden of immortality? And questions like this tend to only ask a whole lot more questions. We wonder what would become of a race that couldn't rely on the certainty of death. We wonder what would become of a mortal human mind trapped in a timeless body. What could drive someone to choose the path of immortality? And perhaps the most important question, if we are no longer mortal, can we still call ourselves human? Today, we're talking about elves, vampires, worms, and so much more so that we can try and explore these questions. After all, in the immortal words of Queen, who wants to live forever? I think that it will surprise absolutely no one to find out that we're going to be starting with The Lord of the Rings. And that's not just because this is largely a Tolkien-themed channel, it's also because Tolkien's elves are very unique in that they are an entire race born into a very particular kind of immortality. You see, although they are functionally immortal, technically it is only the souls of elves that cannot die, and their spirits are bound to the physical creation of Arda. This means that when one of them dies, their soul leaves their body, and it is either re-embodied or reincarnated, or it just drifts. Either way, it will continue to be in existence, in physical existence, until physical creation itself comes crashing down, until the world ends. This is a sharp contrast to the second-born of God, who is named Iluvatar, mankind. When humans die, their souls do not linger, but rather fly out of Arda, out of physical creation, to an unknown place, to await an unknown fate. And to men, this unknowingness is terrifying. They long for the immortality that the elves have, to so easily be able to escape death, and they really struggle to see their mortality as the gift that it was originally intended to be. But that jealousy is understandable. With their prolonged lifetimes, the elves have been able to become masters of any craft that they take on. They are wise, learned, aware of the immediacy and importance of the past in a way that humans just never could be. But this also means that to them, time looks very different. As the elf Legolas explains, "Nay, time does not tarry ever," he said, "but change and growth is not in all things and places alike. For elves the world moves, and it moves both very swift and very slow. Swift because they change little, and all else fleets by. It is a grief to them. Slow because they need not count the running years, not for themselves. The passing seasons are but ripples, ever repeated in the long, long stream." This timelessness has left them with a profound sense of foreboding. They know that no secret destiny awaits them, there are no surprises, they can depend on their future, but they know that their future holds eventual nothingness. Tolkien explains, "The elvish weakness is, in these terms, naturally to regret the past, and to become unwilling to face change, as if a man were to hate a very long book still going on, and wish to settle down in a favorite chapter." In a perfect world, the fixed perfection of elven living would be a blessing, but this is not a perfect world. It's a world marred by sin, by war, by the eventual death of everyone outside of their race. Their only respite is to eventually pass out of Middle-earth, over the sea, and into the timeless land of Valinor, a place that is as evergreen and unchanging as the elves. This heavenly stasis is a comfort to them, but it's nothing compared to the bright excitement and uncertainty and freedom granted to men by the gift of Iluvatar. Their beautiful lives come with one great big inescapable expiration date. And I think it's hard for any of us to say whether, if we were given the choice, whether we would choose blissful stagnation or unsettled freedom. There are actually a few characters in Tolkien's larger legendarium that are put face to face with this choice, and one of the most notable is Beren and Luthien. The tale tells of Luthien, an immortal elf, and Beren, a mortal man, who fall in love and are forced to face mortality face to face. In their adventures, Beren is killed, and Luthien is so distressed that her soul leaves her body and flies out after him. Although she is immortal, she dies. Prompted by the connection of their love, Beren's soul lingers in the halls of death, while Luthien stands before the gods and makes her final plea for Beren's soul. The sorrow of her tale is so profound, so deeply felt, that the gods give her a choice. They will take her sorrow away, and she can pass into unchanging Valinor, or she and Beren will be returned to Middle-earth as mortals, to live for a time together and die together, their souls passing hand in hand into the unknown. Luthien chooses mortality. On the face, this seems like an inconceivable decision. Who, if born with it, would be willing to give up immortality, to give up endless bliss? But for Luthien, she would rather live one chaotic, mortal life than to have to endure all of the ages of the world in solitude. This choice is later faced again by Arwen, Luthien's descendant. As a half-elf, she's granted a choice. When her father Elrond leaves for Valinor, Arwen may go with him, or she may stay. This choice is complicated by Aragorn, a mortal man who sees Arwen and instantly knows that she is his soulmate. Elrond explains her plight, that she may very well leave with him to be immortal in Valinor forever, but Aragorn is undeterred. His heart has been set. Arwen falls in love with Aragorn as well, and it is this love that drives her to sacrifice her immortality and die by his side. She tells him, "There is now no ship that would bear me hence, and I must indeed abide the doom of men, whether I will or nill, the loss and the silence. But I say to you, King of the Númenóreans, not till now have I understood the tale of your people and their fall. As wicked fools I scorned them, but I pity them at last. For if this is indeed, as the Eldar say, the gift of the One to men, it is bitter to receive." Arwen, having experienced both the promise of life eternal and the painful reality of mortality, understands the difficulty of this decision more than most, and compared to Luthien, where her story kind of fades to black as soon as she makes that choice, we see how much Arwen struggles with this decision. Uncertainty is painful, and she just doesn't know what's going to become of her soul. And in the end, when Aragorn grows old and dies, Arwen fades away, surrendering her spirit to the halls of Mandos, facing a fate unknown at Aragorn's side. In a letter, Tolkien admitted, "The real theme of The Lord of the Rings, for me, is about something much more permanent and difficult: death and immortality. The mystery of the love of the world in the hearts of a race doomed to leave, and seemingly lose it, the anguish in the hearts of a race doomed not to leave it, until its whole evil-aroused story is complete." Neither mortality nor immortality carry the secret to life in Tolkien's world, and I think that seems fitting. After all, I'm pretty sure that most of us have also been blessed with the gift of Ilúvatar. We've been left with the painful uncertainty and the freedom that comes with not knowing how or when or where we're going to die, not knowing what is going to become of our souls after we are gone. But by presenting us with the alternative of elvish immortality, I do believe that Tolkien was trying to comfort us. Of course, elves are immortal and beautiful. They're so much more wise and powerful than we ever could be. They've had entire lifetimes to perfect the crafts that they perform. And yet, there are still some of them that are able to be swayed. Some that have tasted the beauty of this immortality and still choose mortality. And while it may not cure our fear of death, Tolkien urges us to see the promise of death and the freedom that may come with it, not as a curse, but as a gift. And you know what would also make a great gift, and actually what would be almost as long-lasting and beautiful as the lifetime of the elves? The posters from this video's sponsor, Displate. Displate makes unique, durable metal posters that are designed to capture all of your interests and passions. They have over 2 million designs to choose from in the Displate catalog, everything from new and original art to officially licensed designs from your favorite fandoms like Star Wars, Marvel, The Witcher, and of course, The Lord of the Rings. Confession time, I actually did not have any of the Middle-earth maps hanging on my walls as art before this, but now I have these two absolute beauties to hang up above my TV. I also got this giant one to sit in my Dune corner, and it looks absolutely beautiful in the space, and it's way more sturdy than the flimsy little paper one that I had taped to the wall previously. It is so easy to set these things up. They come with a tool-free magnet-based mounting system, and as someone who has tried a lot of techniques to get posters to hang up, you know, sticky strips, tacks, nails, tape, you name it, I've tried it. This is by far the easiest and most efficient way to do it. Plus, it doesn't damage your walls at all, which is great if you're renting. Even better, Displate's shipping is super fast, so these make a great emergency gift for that very special nerd in your life. Displate's latest addition is their Textra products that have a texture and it really makes the details pop. My Middle-earth map is actually a Textra one, and I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but it really makes the details pop and the light catches it in an interesting way that you just don't see in paper posters. Go ahead and check them out through the link down there in my description, and if you go and order there right now or over the next couple of days, you can get 25% off your order of 1 to 2 Displates, or if you order 3 Displates, you can get 30% off. That deal only lasts for the next couple of days, so definitely go and check that out now. Again, the link is right down there in the description, and thank you so much to Displate for sponsoring this video and supporting the channel. The elves, whilst being a beautiful portrayal of timeless life, are somewhat unique in that they are a race born into and intended for immortality. But what happens when you take someone who is meant to be mortal and make them immortal? Well, Tolkien gives us an idea of what that might look like in the character of Bilbo, whose life was unnaturally extended by the influence of the ring. Bilbo explains, "I am old, Gandalf. I don't look it, but I am beginning to feel it in my heart of hearts. Well preserved indeed," he snorted. "Why, I feel all thin, sort of stretched, if you know what I mean, like butter that has been scraped over too much bread. That can't be right. I need a change or something." Fortunately for Bilbo, his regular lifespan was able to resume after he gave up the ring, but what about those characters who aren't able to give it up? What about the characters that are coerced into immortality that seems like it's going to last forever? The vampires of Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles are one of my favorite examples of the angsty immortal. I want to issue a quick warning that there will be spoilers ahead for the first interview with the vampire book and hints towards the vampire Lestat, but nothing serious. And that also means that the first 2 seasons of the show will be completely spoiled. You can go ahead and skip to this timestamp right here if you want to avoid all spoilers. Of all of Anne Rice's many very angsty vampires, the cream of the crop is the protagonist of the first book, Louis de Pointe-du-Lac. Life has made Louis grim and pessimistic, even before he became a vampire, and I would argue that that's probably one of the things that drew Lestat to him. Louis was frustrated by the injustices he saw, bitter towards death, and he had a sharp-edged desire to find something, anything, that could make life worth living. In sweeps the vampire Lestat de Lioncourt, promising Louis that through the dark gift of vampirism, he may experience a life without fear, without regret, without the looming presence of death. In the book, Louis' transformation scene into being a vampire is a little bit rushed, but in my opinion, the show elaborates this scene beautifully. Lestat is offering Louis vampirism as a cure for the lifetime of pain that he's endured.
Be my companion. Be all the beautiful things you are, and be them without apology. For all eternity.
With the dark gift, Louis wouldn't need to fear the society that had hemmed him in. The racism, the homophobia, the unfairness, the cruelty. As the apex predator, Louis could make whatever life he wanted to live. But once changed, Louis unfortunately discovers that vampirism was not the solution to all of his problems. His underlying issues, his misanthropy, his depression, his self-loathing, they've gone nowhere, and he is no better equipped to handle them. In fact, the idea of immortality, the idea that he has to keep living the life that he is currently stuck in for the rest of time, becomes torturous for him. Lestat tries to remedy this the only way that he knows how, introducing Louis to his rather laissez-faire attitude and philosophy, teaching him the joy of the kill, the joy of debauchery, but Louis is not like Lestat. He's trying desperately to cling to some semblance of human morality, but that just makes things worse. How can you live a good life when you are consciously performing acts of evil? Lestat and Louis try to bring themselves back to life by turning a girl named Claudia into a vampire and treating her as a daughter, and for a time this seems to soothe them. Louis takes on the role of fatherhood, and he's trying to foster within Claudia the spark of joy that he himself does not have. And all this time I was educating Claudia, whispering in her tiny seashell ear that our eternal life was useless to us if we did not see the beauty around us, the creation of mortals everywhere. I was constantly sounding the depth of her still gaze as she took the books I gave her, whispered the poetry I taught her, and played with a light but confident touch her own strange, coherent songs on the piano. But even that falls flat. Claudia doesn't stay a little girl forever, and eventually she wants answers. She wants to find some kind of meaning, and she is not satisfied with what Louis and Lestat are capable of teaching her, and their illusion of a sweet nuclear family is shattered. They all begin lashing out at each other, and eventually Claudia and Louis kill Lestat, or at least they think they do, and they head off to Europe to find vampires that may understand them better. But for Louis, it's too late. He's not expecting to find any answers. He thinks that life has become truly meaningless. What does it mean to die when you can live until the end of the world? And what is the end of the world except a phrase? Because who knows even what is the world itself? I had now lived in 2 centuries, seen the illusions of one utterly shattered by the other, been eternally young and eternally ancient, possessing no illusions, living moment to moment in a way that made me picture a silver clock ticking in a void. The painted face, the delicately carved hands, looked upon by no one, looking out at no one, illuminated by a light which was not a light, like the light by which God made the world before he had made light. Ticking, ticking, ticking. The precision of the clock in a room as vast as the universe. It makes you wonder, does a clock count as a clock if there's no one there to read the time it's telling? Does a light really matter if there's no one there to see it shine? And is it really a life at all if it has no meaning? Despaired and empty, Louis and Claudia make their way to Paris, and it is there that Louis is revitalized by meeting the vampire Armand. Armand is the antithesis to Lestat. While Lestat was closed off and cagey, Armand seems open. He's telling Louis about his own history, about what he knows about vampirism. He wants to probe Louis's mind about the purpose of their existence, the meaning of evil in the lives of evil creatures, and Louis falls head over heels for him. It is here that Armand explains to Louis how the immortal life of the vampire may come to an end. How many vampires do you think have the stamina for immortality? They have the most dismal notions of immortality to begin with, for in becoming immortal, they want all the forms of their life to be fixed as they are and incorruptible. Carriages made in the same dependable fashion, clothing of the cut which suited their prime, men attired and speaking in the manner that they have always understood and valued, when in fact all things change, except the vampire himself. Everything except the vampire is subject to constant corruption and distortion. Soon, with an inflexible mind, and often even with the most flexible mind, this immortality becomes a penitential sentence in a madhouse of figures and forms that are hopelessly unintelligible and without value. One evening, a vampire rises and realizes what he has feared perhaps for decades, that he simply wants no more of life at any cost. And that vampire goes out to die. This is to be the true fate of the vampire, the end of it all. Although their bodies are safe from age and time, their minds are not. Their minds will continue to age, continue to sustain and hang on to hurt. They watch horrified as all the beauty of their youths passes down the river of time into history. For a 400-year-old vampire like Armand, the only way that he's been able to persist is by anchoring himself wherever he can, by clinging to new people, new vampires, new points of view, digging into their passion, their drive, drinking them dry to help moor him to a new place and time. Louis is to be his next victim. He tells him, "It is through you that I must make my link with this 19th century and come to understand it in a way that will revitalize me, which I so desperately need." "Oh, but you'd be making a terrible mistake," Louis said. "Don't you see? I'm not the spirit of any age. I am at odds with everything and always have been. I have never belonged anywhere with anyone at any time." It was too painful, too perfectly true. But his face only brightened with an irresistible smile. He seemed on the verge of laughing at me, and then his shoulders began to move with this laughter. "But Louis," he said softly, "this is the very spirit of your age. Don't you see that? Everyone else feels as you feel. Your fall from grace and faith has been the fall of a century." Louis and Armand are both using each other. Louis clings to Armand because he thinks that because Armand is old, he must have discovered some kind of a secret to life and living, and he hopes to someday unlock that secret, to infuse his own life with meaning. Armand clings to Louis for the sake of companionship. He hopes that Louis will teach him how to live, how to love, how to survive in this new age. But they're both sorely disappointed to find out that neither of them holds the secret that the other was looking for. All of their disillusions come crashing down as Armand's coven kills Claudia, and although Louis and Armand go through the motions, traveling the world, making a life together, it is all for naught. Louis confesses, "I never changed after that. I sought for nothing in the one great source of change which is humanity. And even in my love and absorption with the beauty of the world, I sought to learn nothing that could be given back to humanity. I drank of the beauty of the world as a vampire drinks. I was satisfied, I was filled to the brim, but I was dead, and I was changeless." Armand comes to recognize this despair in Louis, and he's heartbroken. He tries to provoke a reaction from him, tries to get him to do or say anything. He admits to Louis that he had a part in the death of Louis's beloved Claudia, but even that doesn't get a response to Louis. Louis has drank in the entire world, and he has nothing to show for it. Armand leaves to find his next victim, his next anchor to the new age, and the interview with the vampire book concludes with Louis left utterly adrift, his immortality stripping him bare of any semblance of hope or humanity. But existential despair is not to be the lot of every vampire. For those like Lestat, who truly embrace their vampirism, there is hope that they will find meaning. Louis explains that for Lestat, being a vampire for him meant revenge. Revenge against life itself. Every time he took a life, it was revenge. Lestat has taken advantage of being a vampire to do all of the things that he could not do as a human. He lives passionately and recklessly. He falls in love, he breaks hearts, he creates and he destroys, and although by our human moral standards he's not exactly living the purest life, by vampire standards, he's living the only life you can. This sentiment is actually perfectly expressed by Madeline, Claudia's companion in the show, when Madeline cuts through Claudia's very Louis-esque existential despair and tells her that if she feels like it's all too much, if she feels like it's all building and she's just going to go bang, that she should just go bang.
Go bang, or go flagada, or go cold. I mean, that's fine, then you'll be fine again. And then bang, and then okay, and then bang, and just get used to it. Like weather.
Madeline in the show is actually one of my favorite examples of someone who has figured out the key to living as a vampire without completely losing your mind. She is a human that has experienced all of the horrors and abuse that 1940s Paris has to offer. She already understands what it is to live outside of the standard moral code, to live for scant moments of joy whilst enduring the agony between them. When Claudia meets her, she is instantly enamored, and it's no wonder. Here's finally someone who's not just moping and whining with existential dread, it's someone who wants to take life with both hands and make it her own. She's perfectly suited to becoming a vampire. In a conversation with Armand, when they're trying to get Madeline turned into a vampire, he flatly presents her with the issue that characters like he and Louis are struggling with. How do you deal with the times that you remember becoming history? And Madeline just laughs. She has already felt the displaced, unsettled timelessness of a vampire as a mortal, and welcomes the new challenges of immortality. I think that this really reckless zeal for life, exhibited by characters like Madeline in the show and later Lestat, is kind of the only way that you can survive as a Racian vampire. You can't just wait around for perfect, transcendental meaning to drop out of a book and into your lap. The world doesn't make sense. It is a chaotic, messy, savage garden, and in that garden, you have to fight for yourself. You have to be willing to scrounge for whatever joy you can, the joy of love, the joy of creation. You have to be willing to make mistakes and then get back up from them. It is an utterly imperfect way to live, but for the imperfect creature of a vampire, it might be the only way to survive. Honestly, this whole Lestadian life philosophy just makes me think of Wowbagger, the infinitely prolonged from the third Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy book. Douglas Adams introduces him. Those who are born immortal instinctively know how to cope with it, but Wowbagger was not one of them. Indeed, he had come to hate them, the load of serene bastards. He had had his immortality thrust upon him by an unfortunate accident with an irrational particle accelerator, a liquid lunch, and a pair of rubber bands. And yet, despite all of that, Wowbagger, just like Lestat, has found a reason to live, even if it is a morally dubious one. He would insult the universe. That is, he would insult everybody in it. Individually, personally, one by one, and this was the thing that he really decided to grit his teeth over, in alphabetical order. Is this the traditionally, morally correct thing to do with your life? I'm gonna say probably not, However, we're not necessarily following the rules of traditional morality. We're already breaking the laws of time and space, so who's to say that your reason to live has to follow the conventions of standard morality? Either way, it's fiction, and watching these immortal characters fail and struggle and sometimes succeed to make meaning out of their immortal lives can be a really great way to reflect on our own lives and how we find meaning in a world that sometimes seems insane and chaotic. But the playing field becomes a little bit more complicated when you consider characters that weren't necessarily born into or coerced into immortality, but those who chose that path for themselves. For example, the characters of Dune. I'm going to issue a spoiler warning for all of the Dune books up until the end of God Emperor, and then that also counts for all 3 Denis Villeneuve movies that will ever exist, so go ahead and skip to this timestamp if you'd like to avoid those spoilers. In Dune, the past and the future frequently impose themselves upon the present. Paul experiences this as he is gradually transformed into a god by the Fremen people. They begin to fit him into prophecies, to look gleefully towards his future, and by the end of the novel, although he's lived an entirely mortal human life, he has already ascended to a certain kind of immortality. Paul saw how futile were any efforts of his to change any smallest bit of this. He had thought to oppose the jihad within himself, but the jihad would be. His legions would rage out from Arrakis even without him. They needed only the legend he already had become. Prescience, the ability to see glimpses of the future, imparts a kind of timelessness upon Paul. That, along with the voices of his ancestors awakened in his mind, give him an unnatural connection to the past and the future, and in a way they have already immortalized him. And yet he finds no peace in his prediction of the future. It's a trap, as his son Leto explains. I know the trap of prescience. My father's life tells me what I need to know about it. To know the future absolutely is to be trapped into that future absolutely. It collapses time. Present becomes future. I require more freedom than that. Leto does indeed require more freedom. He is the one that fulfills the golden path, which his father could not. Humanity has become over-reliant on faith. They anticipate heroes and messiahs. They wait on saviors. And Leto seeks to break them from those delusions. But in order to fulfill the golden path, to make the change that humanity needs, Leto must become truly immortal. With the voices of his ancestors clamoring in his ears, and the options of the future a glimmer in the corner of his eye, Leto immerses himself in timelessness, taking on a skin of baby sandworms, inundating himself with a constant cycle of the spice melange. With this coursing through him, he is all-knowing, all-powerful, and immortal. God Emperor of Dune, the 4th book, launches us over 3,000 years past this transformation, when Leto has become the god tyrant that he knew he needed to be. He is an atrocity in the truest form, known by many as a god operating the minutiae of his empire with an iron fist. To nearly everyone who looks upon him, there is next to no humanity left in Leto. He has become a massive, bloated worm with a human face, and if he is not worshipped as a god, then he is cursed as the greatest villain that history has ever seen. And yet, the book provides us with a very unique perspective, because it allows us to see into Leto's mind. It allows us to see how, despite appearances, he has clung desperately onto his humanity. He mourns the loss of it. He recognizes that despite his immortality, he has never been allowed to live even one singular, truly well-lived life. He has no true friends, only the regenerated copies of his old friend Duncan Idaho and his rebellious advisors. He falls in love with a woman, but it is with a woman who is specifically engineered to trap his heart. Their love is true and it is beautiful, but it can never be fulfilled. He will never be a man again. It is far too late for Leto to be anything except for the god monster that he has made himself. And yet, we can also see just how much beautiful, important insight his immortality has given him. "For what do you hunger, Lord?" Moneo ventured. "For a humankind which can make truly long-term decisions. Do you know the key to that ability, Moneo? You have said it many times, Lord. It is the ability to change your mind. Change. Yes. Short-term decisions tend to fail in the long term. This is a key insight. The true power of humanity, the thing that will allow us to continue to persist for eons to come, is our ability to change. No human-made decisions, no matter how long-term you were thinking when you made that decision, can be upheld through all of history. If humanity wanted to survive, they could not be like Leto. They could not be still and unchanging in the sea of time. They would have to learn how to not be part of the prescient vision that Leto once had. And that is the secret to the Golden Path. The Golden Path can only end in one way, with the death of the God Emperor Leto Atreides. Through his sister's descendant, Siona, Leto has bred a race of people who are capable of stepping outside of prescient vision and making choices that are truly free. Like a closed soda bottle being shaken over the course of 3,500 years, Leto's death results in an explosion of humanity taking in their freedom and making truly free decisions. And they will certainly think twice before they place a tyrant god emperor on the throne again. In Dune, immortality is a sticky and painful thing. And it's not the clean, noble agony of Tolkien or the angsty passion of Anne Rice. It is self-imposed torture. But in a way, the immortality that Leto aspires to might just be the most lasting form of immortality of all. Standing over the decrepit corpse of Leto, Siona and Duncan Idaho muse on this. "And everyone thought he was immortal," Idaho said. "Do you know what the oral history says?" Siona asked. "If you want immortality, then deny form. Whatever has form has mortality. Beyond form is the formless, the immortal." "That sounds like him," Idaho accused. "I think it was," she said. Leto has transformed himself into an idea. A chapter in every philosophy textbook that will ever be written in this new universe, a nameless fear that will catch in the back of the throats of anyone who finds themselves falling under the spell of a new charismatic leader. In carrying out his terrible purpose upon himself and upon the universe, Leto has made himself truly immortal. But all of these characters I've discussed have something in common, and that is that they were non-human. Elves are a completely different species. Vampires have supernatural abilities, and Leto tapped into supernatural powers in order to gain immortality. But what about the human who, without thought or supernatural intervention, is launched into immortality whilst still being human through and through? I do usually try and limit myself in these trope videos to just 3 particular tropes because they get very long and I could ramble on forever. However, I couldn't help myself from talking about this short story by Ursula K. Le Guin, The Island of the Immortals. If you, watching this video right now, have not read this story, I'm gonna urge you right now to click off this video and go and read it. I'm gonna link it in the description, but you can also just Google The Island of the Immortals and it'll pop up. It's a 10-minute read, and it does hurt me in my algorithm to tell you to click off of this video, but you seriously should read it because it's very good and you're gonna have a great experience reading it versus me just poorly recounting it to you. But for those of you that are driving while listening to this or doing laundry or just have this on in the background while you're playing a video game and you're not going to go through that effort, allow me to summarize this story for you. If you just finished reading it and you don't need it summarized for you, you can skip to this point Or you can listen to me talk, because at least that's good for my algorithm. We're introduced to an unnamed protagonist who is on vacation in the Yendi Plains. While there, she catches word of an island there where there are people that are immortal. Obviously, she's fascinated by this idea, and she wants to go to this island and check it out for herself. And so she speaks to a travel agent, but when she tells the travel agent about where she wants to go, she's immediately met with disdain. The woman doesn't seem to understand why she would want to go to that island. Still, she reluctantly makes the plans for the protagonist to go to the island, but before she leaves, the protagonist stops off in a library. While trying to research this island in the library, she finds suspiciously little information whatsoever about the island. There's an old account of a man who traveled there long, long ago. There's a report on the diamonds that are sometimes mined on the island, but other than that, there is very suspiciously little information about this island where apparently people are immortal. On the boat ride to the island, the protagonist thinks to herself, if a virus that made you immortal turned up in my country, vast sums of money would be poured into studying it. And if it had bad effects, they'd alter it genetically to get rid of the bad effects. And the talk shows would yatter on about it, and the news anchors would pontificate about it, and the Pope would do some pontificating too, and so would all the other holy men. And meanwhile, the very rich would be cornering not only the market, but the supplies. And then the very rich would be even more different from you and me. What I was really curious about was the fact that none of this had happened. The Indians were apparently so uninterested in their chance to be immortal that there was scarcely anything about it in the library. Once on the island, the protagonist finds it dilapidated and depressed. The residents all wear gauze suits and fly masks to keep away the omnipresent herds of flies that are in the air, flies that allegedly carry the virus that makes you immortal. Once again, the protagonist finds herself wondering who in the world would intentionally avoid the fly bite of eternal life. So she asks a local boy, "If you could, would you like to live a long time?" "Sure," he said, with as much enthusiasm as a Indian is capable of. "You know. But you don't want to be immortal. You wear the fly gauze." He nodded. He saw nothing to discuss in all this. She makes it out to a remote village where supposedly an immortal person lives, and there she sees someone leaning against the well that has been afflicted by a rare tropical disease akin to leprosy. Their legs have been rendered into stumps, their face is completely melted away and scarred, their hair is long and matted, they can't see, they can't speak, it seems like they're barely hanging on. This disease has utterly ravaged them. And so the protagonist avoids the leper and instead finds the local tour guide and pays the tour guide so that she can go and meet the immortal person. And then, of course, the woman then brings her right back to the disfigured person by the well. "You are looking at the immortal of our village," the woman said in the practiced sing-song of the tour guide. "It has been with us for many, many centuries. In this family, it is our duty and pride to look after the immortal. Feeding hours are 6 in the morning and 6 in the evening. It lives on milk and barley broth. Its legs were lost when there was an earthquake 1,000 years ago. It was also damaged by fire and by other accidents before it came into the care of the royal family. The legend of my family says that the immortal was once a handsome young man who made his living for many lifetimes of normal people by hunting in the marshes. This was 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, it is believed. The immortal cannot hear what you say or see you, but it is glad to accept your prayers for its well-being and any offerings for its support, as it is entirely dependent on the royal family for food and shelter. Thank you very much. I will answer questions." After a while, I said, "It can't die." It seems that in our minds, no matter what the Oxford Dictionary definition is, being immortal is not the same as just never dying. Stricken, the protagonist asks if this is the only immortal on the island. "Oh no," she said. "There are others all around in the ground. Sometimes people find them. Souvenirs. The really old ones. Ours is young, you know." She looked at the immortal with a weary but proprietary eye, the way a mother looks at an unpromising infant. "The diamonds?" I said. "The diamonds are immortals?" She nodded. After a really long time, she said. As the protagonist wanders off in the direction of home, completely gutted, she notes, "We are a carbon-based life form, as the scientists say, but how a human body could turn into a diamond, I do not know, unless through some spiritual factor, perhaps the result of genuinely endless suffering. And perhaps diamond is only a name the Indians give these lumps of ruin. A kind of euphemism." To me, this is the horror of all horrors when it comes to the already terrifying prospect of immortality. What if we aren't part of some special, sacred race promised a cushy retirement until the heat death of the universe? What if we aren't a hot, moody vampire surrounded by other hot, moody vampires to canoodle with? What if we don't have some great, larger-than-us purpose driving us forward? What if it just happened one day? And then suddenly the life that you're living right now with all of its tedium was just what you had to do for the rest of time and space. Think about all the things that you've been putting off. All the stuff that you're kind of like, maybe I'll just never get around to that. You know, the overdue credit card bills, the relationships in slow decline, the dreams that you just never quite got around to fulfilling, the aching hearts, the aching souls, the life that you have today riddled with holes and flaws and pain stretched out as it is into eternity. And maybe that is why immortality is at its most tantalizing when it's kept in fiction. Because when we get down to brass tacks, I'm fairly certain that most of us wouldn't actually want to be immortal. We wouldn't accept it if it was presented to us. But within the safe dreamland of fiction, we can imagine what it would look like if we could skirt this great species-wide fear. We can plan out what we would do if instead of decades, we had centuries. The skills that we would learn, the places that we would see, the people that we would become if the final bell never rang. When we seek to learn the secret to immortality, the secret is not how to become immortal. The secret is how to cope with the mortality that from our very first breath we have all found ourselves trapped in. We can see who we are and the lives that we are leading with entirely new eyes. Humans are trained to believe that the grass is always going to be greener on the other side, but through the lens of fiction we can catch a very rare glimpse at the grass on our own side. We can see that it looks pretty green over here too. Those skills that we would perfect if we ever randomly became immortal, if we start today, we can at least get passably good at those skills within a year or two. We might not see every corner of the world, but we can look at the things that we see every day, the streets, the trees, the sky. We can see that with new eyes, and see it for how absolutely beautiful it really is. We may not be able to become the superheroes that we could be if we had all of time to figure it out, but we can still try and become the best version of ourselves that our mortal lives will allow for. Despite the chokehold that it has had on storytelling and human life since the Epic of Gilgamesh 4,000 years ago, I would like to declare today in this video that immortality is kind of overrated. After all, we have read story after story where immortal people want nothing more than to be like us, to have these simple, bright, beautiful lives that we are all gifted from birth. And so I'd think, or at the very least hope, that we might eventually get the message that it's no bad thing to celebrate a simple, mortal life. I like to consider myself a fairly rational person when it comes to what I fear. My phobias are things like the ocean and outer space, which are perfectly reasonable. However, I do have an unreasonable fear of randomly being turned immortal. That's terrifying. I'm not ready to handle all of that. But I would like to hear in the comments what your favorite story is about immortal people. I know that most of the things that I talked about today were people that hated being immortal, but I'm fairly certain that there is stuff that exists out there where people are immortal and also manage to be happy. So please do let me know in the comments what your favorite literature or media is about immortal people, so I can check that out. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it or you learned something new, and do consider subscribing if you want to tune in to hear me talk about stuff almost every single week. Thank you so much for joining me this week, and I hope that you have a very happy Hobbity day.